Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Ad Age Next Retail. I'm Adrienne Pasquarelli, Senior Reporter at Ad Age. This afternoon, we'll be talking about which new consumer behaviors are expected to outlive COVID and how marketers can prepare for them. We'll also take a look at the social media landscape and trends, including the Facebook advertising boycott. I want to remind everyone tuning in on our social feeds to please ask questions, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of each session. But first, we'll talk about how one of the most high-touch shopping experiences, car buying, is going digital. Here to take us on a joyride through that conversation is my colleague, EJ Schultz, Assistant Managing Editor of Ad Age. Hi, EJ. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Adrienne. Good to be here. And you already stole one of my car puns.
Joyride.
There you go.
Sorry about that. So you were watching the conference this morning, I know. What about what you heard did you find most surprising?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to listen to Walgreens talk about how they're increasing drive-throughs in their stores. I mean, that's something that I don't think you typically associate with pharmacies. But obviously, it's an example of how these retailers are really having to just change everything during the pandemic.
Right. There's all this talk about curbside pickup, orders that you place online and then pick up at the store, but not a lot of conversations for retail around drive up. That's been reserved for fast food. So I guess it's like an order of toilet paper and a small Coke.
Yeah, and I wonder what next, what other stores are going to be putting in drive-throughs that we would have never even considered, right? And then as a result of this.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And speaking of driving, I think you're up next with a very interesting panel, so I'll leave you to it.
We are. Thank you. So we are going to take a little detour into the world of online car buying. For years, consumers have done a lot of research ahead of time online before they buy a car, but for the most part, when you make the final transaction, you go into a showroom, you do a test drive, you finalize the deal in person. But with COVID, that became impossible in a lot of states. And to talk about how one dealership pivoted to make the entire car buying experience digital, I'm happy to welcome our next guests. We have Joseph J. Agresta, who is the president of Benzel-Busch Motor Car Corporation, Audi and Mercedes dealership there in New Jersey. And also joining us are Debbie Looney, creative director of Looney Advertising, and Sean Looney, CEO and co-founding partner of Looney Advertising, the Montclair, New Jersey agency, which is the agency for Benzel. Hello, everyone.
Hi, EJ.
Hi, EJ. How are you?
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Jay, I'd like to start out with you. Take us back to March when I think the state of New Jersey literally shut down your business, at least in terms of letting people come there in person. What was that like for you, and what were some of the immediate things you did to try to keep your business going and try to pivot to kind of a purely digital process?
Sure. So if I can, I'm going to take a step back even a little bit further back to the end of February. So we had kind of started tracking things with the virus towards the latter portions of February, and even having some conversations with Sean and his team and Debbie at Looney just about what was happening, and kind of preparing a little bit. We knew that there was something happening out there that didn't look right. We started to feel it in our showrooms. We were getting a lot of feedback from clients, and we were already starting to make changes in our operations as early as late February. As February started to progress, once we got into the second week in February, we really started to see things deteriorate quickly. We knew we were going to see some kind of a shutdown, and we really went into overdrive trying to prepare for that. And we were prepared, but not at the same time. So we were ready to go remotely. We were ready to have our teams working from home wherever we could. We really did not know what the shutdowns would look like from the governor's orders. And we have dealerships in both New York and New Jersey. So we were kind of waiting to hear what the two states were going to do. And while all of that was happening, and while we were kind of putting contingency plans in place, we were having a lot of conversations with Looney and our team there. Just about what was happening, what we were seeing, and what we were preparing to do. So we were kind of starting to think about what our resources were, and what our options might be to have to sell and service as we move forward. We really did not know what customers or how they were going to respond to all of this. So we didn't really know exactly what our response would be, but we knew we were going to have to adjust very quickly and kind of be prepared to continue to adjust as new and updated orders would come out from the different governors.
So now we have Sean and Debbie are now joining us. Hello.
Hi.
So before we talk about some of the specific plans that you guys put in place, I'd like to show a little video that Looney put together for you guys, kind of describing the process from beginning to end in terms of how online car buying works. If we could cue that up now.
Shopping for a new car? Welcome to Express Car Buying. With our Express store, you can search all cars in our inventory or configure your dream car and we'll find it for you. Get our best pricing up front without the hassle. Select payment options for cash, finance, or lease transactions. Get an instant cash offer for your trade-in. No need to visit the dealership. Research and select recommended service and protection plans. Have a question? No problem. Your concierge will be there for you every step of the way. Complete the entire transaction from the comfort of your home in a matter of minutes. Pick up your vehicle at the dealership or have it delivered to you. Your car will be prepped and ready to go. In and out in less than 30 minutes. That's it. It's that easy. Instant pricing and express checkout. Enjoy Express Car Buying. Start shopping our Express store today.
So buying a car in 30 minutes, that seems pretty amazing. Is that really what has happened?
So it's feasible. You can take it from start to finish and you can complete that entire transaction that quickly. If you're really in tune and aware with what you want and need as an individual consumer, you can absolutely do it. And the platform will enable you to do that in a completely contactless way. We haven't experienced most people going all the way through the process because we're kind of making it easier for them to have us jump in and support the process at any point in time. We're trying to take this approach where we kind of don't care if the person is in our showroom, if the customer is on the phone, if they're online. We're taking this kind of omni-channel approach to doing business so that we can jump in and out of the process seamlessly and make it as easy as possible for the customer. So to answer your question, we have not seen a lot of people going through the entire process on their own. We generally will jump in and support them upon request. That has been more of the norm. But what we have seen is people gravitating towards this as a way to get into the process, to use portions of it to reduce the amount of contact, to reduce the amount of time that it takes to buy a car, and to reduce the number of visits at the dealership. Even in some cases, not having any visits to the dealership at all.
You mentioned visits to the dealership. So the state, at least New Jersey, right, allowed things to reopen, I think, in May. And is that the same in New York? So you can have people back in your showrooms today, right?
We can, but we still have a significant number of restrictions. We sanitizing vehicles in between every client is a necessity. So we are still somewhat limited in what we do. We are still trying to be an appointment only store to limit the number of consumers that are in the space at any given point in time. Test drives can be difficult. We're not comfortable putting our team members inside of a vehicle with a consumer. So we've adjusted on the test drive portions of it. They're feasible to do, but we don't do it in the same vehicle right now. And some of that was really driven by what we saw during the pandemic, by the height of the shutdown, I should say, because we're obviously still in the pandemic. But yeah, so adjusting these processes continually has been what we're learning to live with, and just kind of adapt as you go.
So Sean and Debbie, as Jay's kind of laid out how they've overhauled the process, but what was the key in communicating this to consumers to make them feel comfortable about, buying a car in this environment? Sean, do you want to start?
I think the most important thing was first understanding the initiatives and making sure that we simplified them in a way that people can wrap their heads around them and lay them out so people had the choice. I think for the first time since the 1950s, consumers are all behaving the same way. And whether or not the government was going to shut down the dealership, we knew that we had to adapt to these new behaviors and thought processes, whether it's going to shop for a car online or getting your car cleaned a certain way or having a valet service that would pick up and drop off cars. And whether or not you're in the car business or you're in any type of retail business, your model's changed. And I think a lot of these changes will be around for a long time, even after we get through this thing together. So, our job was to figure out how do consumers really want to interact with the products that we're selling, in this case, cars, and how to make it as seamless and easy as possible. And obviously, Benzel Bush team and Jay were wonderful at giving us a lot of things to work with and allowing us to help shape those things. So they were really seamless within the consumer car buying experience.
Debbie, as the creative executive, what kind of tone did you try to use here? I know you guys took more of a lighthearted tone in some cases, kind of avoiding the cliched communications, like, we're all in this together, things we've seen just so many times in the last few months.
We did, because, and our communication pieces even came out before the we're all in this together. We, right off the bat, in our nature, just our nature at Looney, we always go for either humor or lightheartedness or authenticity, just, more of a down to earth approach. So we were going to do that anyway, but, we definitely, people are scared, people are concerned. So we definitely had to keep it light, state the facts, and support Jay with his initiatives. And it was great because there was a lot of passion behind this. And, some clients wanted to go dark, or they were concerned, or they were nervous about saying too much, too little. But Jay and his team were, rolling up their sleeves, ready to go and stay in this together. So it was easy to create messaging because we were all in agreement together.
So I want to break down some of the individual components here of how actually online car buying works in its entirety. We saw in the video there was a mention of a sort of an online concierge. Looks like a person, obviously kind of answering questions in real time as you're shopping and configuring cars. Jay, do you want to talk about that? And is it more like sort of a chatbot type thing, or is it a live person? How does that work?
Sure. So it is a live person. We have a business development center team that is kind of monitoring all of our digital activity in the background and is prepared to jump in at any time. A car buying experience is not an easy one. It's not an intuitive process for most people. And especially in this part of the world where in New York and New Jersey, we generally lease about 95% of our new cars. The pre-owned cars, there is not really a pre-owned leasing program, but on the new car side, it's about 95% leasing, and those are complicated to configure. There's much more of a bespoke tailoring type of effort into putting a proper lease contract together, because you want to make sure that it really fits the needs of the individual driver. How are they going to drive that car? Mileage? How long do they want to keep it? Is it for personal use? Is it for business use? There are a lot of factors that come into play that don't make it easy to configure a lease on your own or just a transaction on your own. And that's where we kind of jump in. So, you have the ability at any point in time in this process to ask a question, and that immediately goes to our business development center, and they can try to jump in real time, either via chat, via text, via phone, video, whatever format is easiest for the client. We try to utilize kind of all of these different communication channels to stay in contact with the owner.
I think probably one of the more radical changes you had to make was this whole virtual test drive, right? I mean, you even mentioned it earlier. You're still a little hesitant, I think, people to get in a car with someone and do a test drive. And is that literally like it sounds like you're doing some sort of live stream like if I was buying a car, walk me through it. How does that work?
Yeah, so it is a really difficult piece, and it's specifically difficult because car buying is an emotional experience, right? The best part of the car buying experience is the test drive. You want to get in the car and you want to feel what that car feels like. You want to feel the engine, the acceleration, the smell of the interior and the leather. All of these things make it an emotional experience, and you don't want to give that part of the buying process up. But obviously, in the pandemic, we just couldn't do it. We weren't for a good portion of March, April, and even into May. We were not allowed to have customers into the vehicles until after they actually purchased the car. It changed sometime in May, both in New York and New Jersey. But we tried to supplement it with exactly what you said, using a lot of video, where our account representatives would get into the vehicle that the customer was interested in. They would take it on their own test drive and either video themselves or try to stay on, some type of a video chat in real time to try to describe the experience to the client and try to give them some of the features and benefits during the drive. So at least it gave you a sense of the car and a sense of what you were trying to buy. What we had to also do to adapt to this, because we couldn't put the customer in the vehicle, was to add a purchase guarantee. So, because we couldn't have you in the car, we wanted to make sure that you really felt comfortable with the purchase. And we were willing to guarantee the purchase by taking the vehicle back if you felt like you made a mistake. We weren't going to stick you with the car afterwards. And that did help a lot. That did give people some peace of mind.
If you're just joining us, we're being joined by Jay Gresta, that's president of Benzel Busch Motor Corps Corporation, Debbie Looney from Looney Advertising, and Sean Looney from Looney Advertising. We're talking about online car buying. Want to give a quick shout out to some of our viewers. Alex Silver is watching. Sharon Harvey, Pat O'Brien, Brooks Trippett. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So let's talk about this a little bit more in terms of the changes you made and how you communicated them. Sean and Debbie, did you guys change your media approach in terms of where you're placing ads? And I know you're talking more, I think, about kind of the service aspect of this versus pricing, which you may have done in the past. Can you talk about those things?
Sure. So initially, before the pandemic, we already transitioned Benzel just taking on the identity of the cars that they were selling, and we really leveraged their assets, their core assets. A lot of dealerships make the mistake of trying to assume the identity just of the brands they're selling, but obviously, when you buy a car from a company, there's a lot more things involved in terms of your trust of the dealership and how they'll service you over the lifetime of that car that you own. And when the pandemic hit, we pivoted again as a company. Not just with the media choice we made, but within the messaging that we put out. So, we did a study as the pandemic was evolving early in terms of media on sale and what that would look like and how we can take advantage of it. Within every crisis, there's opportunity. And so we scaled back on some out of home. We invested in television. We invested heavily in social, both organic. We increased tremendously and in paid. Digital, we kept the same, which was not on sale, but still a very important venue for us to be active in. And we increased search because there were new initiatives being launched that had never been done before. So 360 Sanitize was a new vehicle cleaning service that Benzel has introduced to the world. And it's a very high-end, unique premium service that needed to be explained. And people started searching for that new term. We wanted to be in the game early. We wanted to own the right terms. So that was a really good plan that delivered tremendous results for his company. We actually increased our social and digital engagements tremendously during this downtime for most businesses, which was a nice case study for everybody.
Car advertising traditionally has been very much aligned with sporting events. Especially at the supplier level, the big brand advertising, and I'm assuming at the dealer level as well. With no real sports happening until now, things are just starting to come back. Was that a challenge for you guys to get your message out in the right venues?
Deb, I don't know if you want to answer this, but we didn't in the past just align with sports with the team. We've done some sports marketing before, but we really have a diversified approach with how we align ourselves with consumers in his markets. And throughout the country, actually, he has a huge national following because he sells so much custom high-end cars. When I say he, I mean Benzel. So, the sports thing wasn't a big deal for us because to us, that's a bit of a cliche play. And people engage with a lot of different media and a lot of different content. And it was only a small portion of what we did previously. So we really didn't miss it at all, to be honest with you. I personally miss it. But from a marketing standpoint, it didn't affect us too much.
Yeah, the target markets, I'm thinking about all the communication pieces was, it was a lot to families, moms, people at home, definitely addressing the working from home situation. And, so yeah, the sports didn't really take into play.
So you mentioned, I want to bring Jay back on and ask about this sanitation process. You guys sort of branded, I think, 360 sanitation. What is that?
So we started getting some feedback early on from both our sales and service teams. The representatives were just talking about customer questions, things that seemed like they were obstacles to trying to do business with our clients. People were worried about getting into our loaner cars. People were worried about getting into a new car or a pre-owned car. They just didn't have a comfort level. And at the beginning of this pandemic, there was very little information out there about transmission, right, of the virus. So we were kind of going on this premise that, we were going to need to find ways to overcome these hurdles by making our clients and our team members safe, by putting protocols in that would really get past these safety hurdles. And one of those pieces was trying to find a way to completely sanitize a car after every single use. And then seal the car up and leave it sealed until the next person was going to get into it. And it started out where we were, initially just wiping the car down with, antibacterials, and evolved very quickly from there as we started to realize that there were so many different things we could do. So we started to adapt and using an ozone generation system to take any virus out of the air inside of the car. We replaced the HEPA filter. So that any virus that's trapped inside of the circulation filters in the car are also replaced. And we have a growth inhibitor, a viral growth inhibitor that we fog the entire car with. So in addition to just a general wipe down of the commonly touched surfaces, which you'd expect at most dealerships, we added these other 3 layers on top of that to really provide protection for the clients and especially for our own team members, to make sure that they knew with confidence when they got into a car that they would be safe.
And you also are doing, because obviously service continued throughout, right? You had your service, but you did deliveries, you did a valet service, right? So someone could literally have one of your employees come and pick up their car, service it, and bring it back. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's that a big part of what the team at Looney helped us with was getting that message out there. People were, even though they could drop off their vehicle at a dealership because we were open and considered an essential service, people were reluctant to go out, especially in the beginning. We saw our transaction levels dropped to as low as by 90% in the first couple of weeks, and we were desperately trying to find ways to adapt quickly in this. And this was one of the first things that the team at Looney grabbed onto was, how can we get this message out there, because this is a really good service and a way to overcome this service obstacle, right? Getting valet service out there, get our ability to come pick up the car, service it, sanitize it, bring it back to you. All of that was really, really important to communicate quickly, and they did an amazing job with that, keeping us going.
I think the interesting, I'm sorry, Jay. I think the interesting thing was, we first had to prioritize the initiatives that were going to drive the business and help consumers actually get through this, because people need their cars. The second thing that we had addressed was tonally, what's the right way to do it? And so, for instance, valet service was identified early, in mobile service where they actually can fix the car at someone's house or business. But, tonally at a certain point, we said, okay, let's identify with people that are stuck at home. And at a certain point, I think collectively as a society, we got beyond, we're all in this together. And that became kind of a cliche expression that people grew tired of. When we started to have, fun and identify with people being stuck at home with either using stock footage type material, or even, Jay and his team shot some original footage with their iPhones, and we were live streaming with them saying, no, shoot it this way. And when we cut stuff together, we made them go back and shoot things, and it was a very nimble, imperfect process, which is, part of, I think, being authentic, sharing that, where we were, building the car as we were driving it. So this type of solution, was very much an ongoing process. And, I think it really worked timing wise and us getting out the right messaging.
So I want to go to a question from one of our viewers who asks what I think is on a lot of people's minds in the industry, which is, this comes from Bill on YouTube. Do you expect the online car shopping, buying, and quick checkout to continue post-pandemic? And already, since you've reopened your showrooms in May, are you still getting some customers that are kind of doing the entire process online? And do you see that growing actually in the next few years, even when we're beyond coronavirus?
Yeah, we definitely do. And we are continuing to invest heavily in training for our team and to continue to evolve the process as a result of it. We fully expect that this is going to be the direction that the industry goes in. It was starting to go down this path anyway. It was kind of happening organically and without a lot of push behind it. And, customer adoption rates were very, very low. Very few customers were taking this on. And, I've got a couple of statistics I can share with you on that. But even after we opened, we're still continuing to see the same very high level of engagement from our clients. The communication messages that Looney's putting out there for us are still resonating very effectively. It is still driving a ton of traffic to our website, and people are jumping right into the digital platform and the car buying process. We don't think this is going to change. We think it'll be a part of our future. At what level, we're not sure, but we're fully investing in it and preparing to grow with it. And we are seeing some benefits out of it too. We know we can shorten the purchase experience, the amount of time and effort that it might take to buy a car. There are certain pieces of the buying process that we can significantly simplify through the digital process. And those are the pieces that we're really trying to focus on right now. So yeah, we don't think this is going anywhere.
So with more people potentially buying online, how are you adjusting your showrooms? Is there a potential that you could actually reduce your actual store footprint? Or I know that real estate's probably hugely important, and traditionally in car buying, being in the right street corner. Are you thinking about that at all?
We are. I mean, it's early in the process to start to consider what the end impact might be for the physical spaces. We do still think that there's an in-person portion of the buying experience that is preferable. We do think that the test drive example that I gave earlier, that piece of it is really important to the buyer to be able to get into the actual vehicle that they're going to purchase. Is a critical step that most people really still want. Yes, we can overcome that digitally, but it's not ideal. So I think that there will be a portion of it that will always kind of go back towards the in-person experience there. But like I said, we can do this more efficiently, which we could theoretically reduce some of the overhead involved in the process as a result of that. And those are things that we'll explore as it continues to evolve.
So we're about out of time, but I wanted to have one parting question. What was the biggest lesson you learned out of this that you think you can apply in the future? Jay, you want to go?
Sure. I think that look, there are two. The first most important lesson is being prepared, and I think the fact that we had so many different pieces of our business that we had out there organically, like mobile service and valet service and a digital buying platform. We've always been trying to do business the way our customers want to do business, and when you've got your hand out there in all these different areas, it makes it really easy to pivot and adapt, because you can kind of change course very quickly without having to reinvent everything that you do. I also think that the communication with our communications team was 100% critical. Sean and his team reached out to us before things shut down and knew where we were going and what we were facing, and they were fully prepared to do this in lockstep with us. And those communications happened very regularly through the early parts, especially of the pandemic. And that's why we were able to adapt so quickly. Without those pieces, this would have been a completely different environment for us, and our result would have been very, very different.
And can I say, from the marketing side, lesson learned is that, don't give up. We had this pivot change. Don't go dark. There's a lot of brands that did, And I think the ones that stayed in the game will be the ones who be winners in the end, because they stayed relevant, they stayed part of the conversation, and the consumers are now talking about, who's here, who's relevant, who helped me out during that time. So from a marketing standpoint, I think that we rolled up our sleeves, we really got in with all of our clients, and it turned out well.
Okay, that's a great place to leave it. I want to thank you all for joining us, and appreciate all the insight and intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
See you, Jerry.
Take care. Bye.
Appreciate it.
So up next, a word from one of our sponsors, Roku. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to today's Publishers Fireside, where we talk to thought leaders, influencers, and market makers in the media marketing and advertising ecosystem. I'm Josh Golden, the president and publisher of Ad Age, and today I have with me Julian Mintz, who is the director of sales for West and Central for Roku. Julian, thank you for joining me today, and welcome.
Hey, how's it going, Josh? Thanks for having me.
You are certainly you're welcome. I'm excited you're here. I'm guessing, based on the audience that you're in front of today, there's got to be some amazing data that you can share that gives some more insight into the kind of information that Roku is able to capture.
Yeah, absolutely. So Roku's a distribution platform for all of these new and existing streaming apps. So we're really the conduit that delivers TV entertainment via streaming into the living room. And through that, we get pretty unique insight into what people are watching, not just on our platform, but in linear TV as well. So when we talk about data and overall insights from the last few months, we've seen a few interesting things. I think the first is just general viewership hours. What we're seeing is an acceleration of a trend that started several years ago, and that's that streaming hours are up fairly significantly, and linear hours are declining. And so on Roku specifically, since the beginning of March, we've seen between a 70 to 80% increase in streaming hours from this same time last year, whereas linear has declined back to levels not seen since 1995. And as it pertains to retail specifically, last year we saw an 8% jump in streaming hours year over year on Black Friday, a 5% jump year over year on Cyber Monday. We expect those numbers to be even higher this year. Whereas when you look at linear reach year over year since 2011, it's actually down a full 16% specific to retail ads. So I think it speaks to a larger trend for retailers to continue to invest in strategies around incremental reach against a cordless audience.
Interesting.
So that's really the first thing. Second thing, we've seen a flip when it comes to day parts. So traditionally, Roku viewing happens more in prime time than during the day. That mirrors some of the behaviors in the linear space. We've actually seen since March, with everybody staying at home, that's flipped. And now daytime hours have actually surpassed primetime viewing hours. And I think it's interesting because it speaks to some different behaviors and mind states that users are going to be in when they're consuming their TV content. Instead of the fully lean back experience of viewing TV at 9 p.m., there may be more multitasking or just a different mind frame altogether of watching TV in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I would almost argue that it's a streaming renaissance that is inviting new and different ways of engaging. But I'm curious, knowing that we're kind of talking about retail and focus, there must be something that you've done that's helped evolve that, that the new ad innovations that have helped maybe sort of address the particular audience for retail.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, the three core principles at Roku, not just in our ad business, but in the business as a whole, are ease, control, and value. So the easiest to use interface, the most possible content, and then all the best free content. And those same principles guide our approach to retail as well. So for instance, years ago, we stood up interactivity on our video ads, not just on the Roku platform, but the ability to make a linear ad interactive as well. What that means for retailers is that you can increase your shoppability within your video ad ecosystem. So a user is watching your 30-second commercial, they see an overlay pop up. For a retailer that's still looking to drive people into stores, we can help pull up a store locator. Retailers can send coupons or advertise specific products. all from the comfort of a user's couch. So really increasing that frictionless, shoppable environment. And that's really just the tip of the spear. Data is really at the core of what we do. It's also at the core of a platform that we just released called OneView, which is a singular buying platform for all of a brand's media, not just their Roku media, but for omnichannel media as well. And interesting things we can do there when using data are things like retargeting, which can really help a retailer. So use TV to drive awareness, but then understand the full funnel and the full path to purchase for a user and message them on different screens using retargeting to help drive them towards an action, whether it's into their store or to actually make a purchase.
Amazing. Julian, let's quickly look at what's happening this afternoon at Ad Age Retail Next. Okay, and we're back. Julian, I got to tell you, what you were just talking about reminded me when I was back at NBC, we were talking about how there would be a moment where you could buy Jennifer Aniston's sweater, as you're watching Friends. I know, right? Totally dating it, right? But it seems like this moment is actually present, specifically when you connect the streaming infrastructure and like an e-commerce solution. Is that right? Are those things connecting now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly a moment in time for us right now, and something that we're looking to build on in the future. And there's also a lot of other cool applications specifically to our platform when it comes to things like retail. We talked about data a good bit. We have some unique data that's specific to the streaming experience. So for instance, we can see if a Roku user's battery is low. And if their battery is low, we can serve them an ad to buy new batteries, whether it's from the retailer or a battery brand specifically. So a lot of exciting things we can do there. And I think one other thing we want to touch on is our new retail data program that we just released and just announced about a month ago. We're launching it at the start with Kroger Precision Marketing, so focused on their CPG brands. But it's really the ability for a retailer to start to really understand TV advertising and its ability to drive lower funnel and purchase activity. And so what it is retailers can bring their unique data to our platform, match it against our unique identity solution, and really serve a more targeted advertisement on behalf of our client brands to our audience. And then on the back end, to help use their in-store purchase data to understand whether an exposure on a Roku device actually led to a purchase of that product.
No, it's fascinating. I'm assuming based on the sort of the intricacies of data that you have, that there's probably some privacy protection, I'm guessing, that's tucked in there to make someone feel a little bit more comfortable about sharing that data and then knowing that they're being given a targeted ad.
Yeah, absolutely. Within the retail program, all the data is passed through a mediator like a LiveRamp. So we're not handling any retail data from a PII perspective. And then on the Roku side, we have a direct relationship with our consumers, which really enables us to provide them the tools to understand our privacy policy, our products, and to give them quite a bit more control over that entire experience than a lot of other players in the ad tech space that don't necessarily have that direct relationship with their consumer.
Totally. As I think about sort of the future of retail and knowing the major moments in retail, I'm not overwhelmingly schooled, but I'm guessing there's holiday and probably back to school, which back to school now is a little more, I don't know, a little more loose to say the least. Can you project or suggest how, what a retailer could take advantage of for a back to school like thought? Because I don't even know what that's going to look like anymore.
Absolutely. It's very relevant for me with a 7-year-old and 4-year-old at home. I don't think any of us quite know what back to school looks like. We know it'll be different, but it's probably safe to assume that users are going to be spending or people are going to be spending a little bit more time at home than they would have in previous school years. And so we're going to continue to try to provide all of our users with the most engaging content and as much free content as possible. And within that, there's really a huge focus on kids content. So about a year ago, we released the Roku channel, Kids and Family. That's a section within our owned and operated channel that's aptly named the Roku channel. It's completely free, no login, no subscription. But within the Kids and Family section, it's really a place for families to engage in the living room with all of their favorite content. And it's really easily navigatable, if navigatable is a word, and sortable based on content themes and favorite characters and age. And so we're really going to continue to provide those resources for kids to enjoy all their favorite content. It's also going to become a hub for summer learning. So we have a summer learning section in the Roku channel, Kids and Family, where kids can continue that education process. So it's turning 1 year. We're throwing a birthday party. We want to celebrate all the kids that might not have been able to celebrate a birthday in the way that they've normally been able to. So throughout this month, we're going to have thematic content around things like pizza and ice cream and trains and cars and all the things that kids love. It's something that we're really excited about.
Julian Mintz, thank you so much for joining me. The Director of Sales at West and Central for Roku. You did a terrific job. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Josh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Garrett Sloan, the technology reporter here at AdAge, and glad to be here with AdAge Next Retail. So I'm going to be presenting a panel right now and introducing a few of my guests today. And let me just introduce them quickly, where we're going to be talking about the future of retail and communities and how to build communities online on platforms like Pinterest and Poshmark, where two of my guests right now are coming from. So let me introduce them right now. We have Sarah Cunningham, the Chief Growth Officer at TPN. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
We also have Bill Watkins, the U.S. Sector Lead at Pinterest. So welcome, Bill.
Hello.
And we'll bring in Stephen Tristan Young of Poshmark here, who will fill out the rest of the panel. So thanks, Stephen. Good to have you all, and I'm glad we could do this. We're just going to get started here, try and talk a little bit about the future of communities and how we're building our brands online and how retail is becoming more of an online community-based experience. So I guess I would start with Stephen here. We spoke yesterday about Poshmark. Tell me a little bit about what community is like on Poshmark. What do you do?
Sure. So Poshmark is a community of basically buyers and sellers, people who are really been passionate about fashion, which is how we first started the platform many years ago. Over the last 10 years, we've grown to over 60 million registered users. And across that base, we have over 10 to 12 million buyers and sellers at any given time are active in the process of buying, selling, sharing closets, liking closets, sharing tips, and also not just engaging online, but also normally engaging offline and sharing best practices on how to sell, how to create closets, how to style your outfits. So it's a really active community that's been built around how to engage the user around a common passion, which started off as fashion. And since then, we've also added home, beauty. Recently, we added toys and games and makeup as well. So all of these categories have really allowed us to create these sort of communities within communities that really foster people who are really passionate about a specific product and want to engage with others.
That's right. Yeah, online. And I'm imagining Pinterest, Bill, has a lot to say about communities and what people are interested in. And companies like Poshmark probably can leverage the Pinterest platform. So how does that fit into everything?
Certainly. Pinterest, our mission is to bring everyone the inspiration to create the life they love. And pinners are telling us that every single day. Specifically, they're telling us two things. Number one, that they want to get inspired. But number two, they want to shop. So we really think about building this community of shoppers on Pinterest and coming to our platform to discover ideas. They're discovering products. They're saving these things to collections. And in essence, they're creating an online shopping list, if you will. And our goal is to really enable that shopping experience. we've been investing in making Pinterest more shoppable for the past 2 years now, and that's through a few different ways. The first is through product feeds from retailers such as Poshmark to take their online catalogs, and in an effort, we can now show over literally hundreds of millions of in-stock products on the platform. That's one way. The second way is through our computer vision technology, and this is in an effort to match lifestyle imagery to purchasable items in feed. And then lastly is through our machine learning powered recommendations, really to help our pinners find things that they know they love, but oftentimes things that they would have never thought to search for, but are very relevant and they find interesting. So we really are focusing in on really developing this community of shoppers on Pinterest and really helping to inspire them, but as well drive them to action and drive them to purchase.
That's right. And Sarah, you work with brands who can think about using these sort of platforms, Pinterest and Poshmark. What are brands able to do? How is it fitting into their sort of, roadmaps to use platforms and build communities?
So TPN is a creative commerce agency. So we work with both manufacturers as well as retailers on developing their full commerce strategies. And so we do use both of these platforms quite a bit from a social commerce perspective in terms of platforms to help engage. We don't really think of communities as being either an online community or an offline community. We talk about it as just community because in retail, omnichannel is so critical as people are seamless and move from experience to experience. So it's really about engaging on your terms and being able to find the relevant type of information that will either inspire you or inform a purchase. And that's really what we work with our clients on, identifying the right platforms to help them find their fans and the people who want to connect with them in a very personal way.
Yeah, and Sarah, talking about now, we're talking about communities not just online, but in real life, but we're not in real life as much as we used to be right now. So have you seen that become something where the retailers and the manufacturers have to sort of rely on the online experience?
Well, it's interesting because with quite a few of our clients, their community, it really provides a lifeline for the customers. They're going in there to, particularly with one of our clients who works in the telecommunications space, their online community is helping them stay informed and stay connected during these trying times. Oftentimes what we've seen over the last couple of months is first and foremost is, are you open? Right? Were you considered an essential business? Mm-hmm. What are your safety procedures? How do I know what's going to happen when I get there? But beyond that, which stores are located, but people have a lot of questions on, how do I engage? Or for this telecommunications client, it's really about, what do I need to do about my bill? What if I'm in a financial crisis and I can't pay? I can't lose my lifeline, which is my mobile phone. Mm-hmm. And so you can see how critical the communities take place. I think we've also seen online communities like Nextdoor that used to be about spying on your neighbors a little bit, and now have become very, very important lifelines at individual communities. We've seen brands be called out in there was people were trying to find certain products and they needed to know which retailers were open. Oh, Walgreens gets their products at 8 o'clock in the morning and you should show up then if you want to be able to get some certain things. So it's been really interesting to see how people have pivoted and started to use a lot of these different platforms to keep themselves informed.
Yeah, you're able to get some market intelligence, and that's something that I think Pinterest talks a lot about too. Bill, that's something you probably have to talk with brands a lot about, is what kind of information can you bring back to them?
That's right. I think about this on two dimensions. One, just relative to the growth that we've been seeing. We're getting a lot of insight, a lot of data. And then two, in a safe and compliant way, in a PII compliant way, what can we share? What are some of the insights that we're seeing? And on the former, I'll say that we're certainly seeing record highs right now, both in traffic, impressions, searches, saves, clicks, as well as ingested conversions on the platform. And we believe that really the direction of digital trends, digital consumer behavior, it's really boding well for us in that we've been investing in this area for a while. So really, we announced this year, we now have a verified merchant program on Pinterest. And this is really to tap into understanding what are the most trustworthy in-stock shoppable products that we have that we can surface to our partners. We now have nearly 3x more shoppable products than we did just a year ago. And really the goal is to make all of Pinterest shoppable, be that in pins, boards, within search, and then additional partnerships that we can build. We recently announced a partnership with Shopify. So there's a lot more shopping activity that takes place on the platform, and then it's a matter of what are we seeing? What types of insights are we seeing? And it's been interesting these past 4 months, I'll say. In March, a lot of the insights that we were seeing from Pinners were all around triage and information. They needed help, how to entertain their children, pantry recipes, knowing that they really could go outside and shop, or home office and DIY. And really where this has gone to, well, we saw this notion of escapism and optimism in April and May around travel and event planning. Now we're in this, I would say, pre-recovery mode. Still very much some COVID or shelter-in-place insights, but we're seeing a lot of insights around simplicity and minimalism, comfort and sustainability in the home. We're seeing a lot of insights from casual and no-frill fashion. And then lastly, and this is just a fun one, with respect to family entertainment, we're seeing if it's increases in Lego challenges or botanical watercolor art or woodworking at home. We're seeing as well, I wanted to mention, quite a significant uptick with road trip with kids. And my wife and I, we have 3 children, and I'm actually taking this call on a road trip with my family. I'm at my in-laws right now. So
You're mid-road trip right now.
thought that was apropos.
Excellent. Before I get to you, Steve, I want to actually break in here because we are live. So I'm being told we have to say hello to some of our viewers out there. So give me a sec to give a shout out to George Letfala, Jose Velasco, Vanya Alvarado, Debbie Fabrina, Albert Salas, Elena Woods, and Kelsey Brogan. So they are all tuned in. Good.
Awesome.
Now, Stephen, yeah, you must have some of those insights too. You're seeing how people are shopping now, what they're buying on Poshmark, what they're selling. What do you notice about the home shopper? And you're like we're talking about communities. So are people congregating around certain items and becoming communities around them?
So let me approach it 2 ways. I want to first address, because I know we talked a little bit about the communities from the 2 different lenses. And one thing that I think is really important to mention is that even before COVID, the idea of a community-based tech platform really was beginning to gain a lot of traction, right? If you think of Nextdoor, to what Sarah just mentioned, but Glossier, Peloton, Poshmark, it's really this advent where people wanted to use technology to connect with other people. And that's where also Pinterest comes in. And I think what just happened with COVID is that we said, hey, you know what, we still want to connect, but now we normally have many other options, but now online's our only option. And how do we sort of evolve from that? And for us, one thing that we added on was that we actually had a lot of offline events that we normally would run across the year called Posh Party Live, which I'd mentioned earlier is a way for our local communities to actually get together in different parts of the country, share best practices, and really have a good time sharing their experiences on the Poshmark platform. During COVID, we had to migrate that into a different format. We created something called Posh and Coffee, which are basically Saturday morning virtual get-togethers. We've had over 600 of them now in the last 3 months alone. And from there is where we're getting a lot of these learnings about how do people want to interact, what are the brands or what are the items that people are really interested in, so that the selling and the sharing isn't just about how to do it, but also what's hot and how to sell those items. And so the second part of that is similar to what Bill had said, is there's a lot of items that people have really been, I guess I would say, creating themselves or selling. For us, just like everyone else, obviously leisure wear was really big. But one thing that was really hot for us going into the summer was tie-dye outfits. Both women's tie-dye listings as well as men's tie-dye listings grew north of 75 to 100% year over year. So that's something that signaled to us that people really love these items. One thing also that's really interesting, we launched our men's business a couple of years ago. And every time that there's a cultural moment, like last fall, we had the Mr. Rogers movie, cardigans shot up on the platform. This year so far, the Michael Jordan docuseries, The Last Dance, really also spurred a lot of people looking for NBA type items and double-breasted jackets. So you can almost see that what people are consuming in that escapism, they're also trying to look for and find a way to sort of connect with that whether it's through purchasing an item or connecting with that specific moment. And the other part that's really interesting for us is, and it actually ties to what someone else has just said, because we have more people staying at home, our home goods category has actually seen a number of really interesting trends. The one, obviously, that we actually got a pickup on CNN a couple of weeks ago was that Starbucks tumblers have really surged, that people, even before Starbucks kind of opened on, had a sense of just wanting to have the Starbucks experience at home. And tumblers were really actually super hot on the platform, as well as most recently beer koozies, outdoor string lights, beach towels. People are actually creating their own home events and buying those accessories in our home goods market instead of going out. So for us, we probably, I think if you looked at what Pinterest sees and what we see, we probably have a really good insight into sort of the US consumer and the kinds of things they like that they're looking at right now. And it's really at this sort of, I would say, meta level where their actions are actually speaking the trends. They're not following the trends that are being told to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sarah, what are you then hearing from brands who are talking about these very same things? They're probably trying to learn what they can use on Poshmark and Pinterest and how you might be able to help manufacturers and the other retailers get involved. What do you think is the best way of using these platforms?
Right. Well, I have to say, as a mom of a 13-year-old girl, tie-dye is trending very big, at least amongst the 13-year-old gals, and I'm part of that above ground pool community now. So during COVID, absolutely. I think for our clients, we really look at to the earlier point, using Starbucks as an example, is what types of experiences are people trying to create? So oftentimes there is a difference between, from a retail perspective, is it an errand or an experience that you're looking for? And now it's a great insight with people are trying to create these types of experiences with their homes. So for us, it's really about how is your brand part of that story? How is it helping individuals be able to create stories and create these moments for their families or for themselves? And this idea of normalcy, or the brands that they were normally consuming or interacting with, outside the four walls of their home, they want to create those types of experiences to create some normalcy now. And so we look at a lot of those different types of trends to see what people are really passionate about. Hidden Valley Ranch is one of our clients, and people are really passionate about ranch dressing. For any of those that are like our hardcore ranch people. And so this idea, it's always been out there pre-COVID about recipes and things to do with ranch, but it has exploded and gone to a whole other level. And to be able to connect and find those other people, and how ranch has become part of your story and part of your social persona in the storytelling you're doing across the platforms has been really interesting to watch.
Ranch, yeah, I'm sure Pinterest has a lot of ranch fans. You do plenty of ranch recipes too, right?
Yeah.
We do. Though one interesting thing that I wanted to add in kind of thinking about food, one of the things I wanted to share was holiday food, but holiday in general has really begun to see a material surge on Pinterest. Pinners are planners. They come to the platform upstream to the purchase cycle, and generally we see holiday begin to peak around August or September on the service. But interestingly, we began to see that in April, and I think this comes back to this notion of around April and May. Escapism and optimism. It's very clear our pinners are looking forward to looking forward. So if this was across search terms, be it baking and food, be it party and event foods, be it outfits and fashion or gift ideas. But I think some of the interesting stats that were, I think, even more meaningful that I wanted to share, half of the pinners that we've surveyed here over the last 30 days say that they want brands to help them take the holidays to the next level. And interestingly enough, about half of those pinners are saying that they want brands to help them do this on a budget. I think most notably, 5 out of 10 pinners are saying that they want brands to help them bond with loved ones to create special moments with their family this holiday season. You can really sense that escapism, that optimism, but that really longing for connection. And we're seeing this in our insights. And I think when we think about knowing that 9 out of 10 pinners have said that, brands have influenced purchases that they've made, well, then the question is, what can we do together with our partners, with brand, such as TPN and such as Poshmark, in service of our shared customer, the pinner. And I think of 3 things. Like, number one, our pinners are being crystal clear to us with what they want. So how can we then in turn be crystal clear with respect to what we can offer them? And if this is free shipping, guaranteed delivery, 30-day trials, discounts, for those that are going to purchase early, is one thing. 2, 7 out of 10 pinners are telling us that inspiration is influential in determining what to buy. So how can we recreate, a physical or a digital aisle really in any and every feed where your consumer is? And then lastly, we're seeing this trend in self-gifting this year. And how do we work with partners to really embrace this trend of self-gifting and make individuals feel good about it? It's been a difficult year, and let's service this trend as well. But I thought that was an interesting bit that I wanted to add.
Yeah,
it starts with food, but I think it's
you have to self-gift.
We definitely saw that, where I think a lot of people we thought initially with COVID coming on that there would be much more of a retrenching of consumer purchasing behavior, but people were actually purchasing more items, but just lower ticket items, because they really felt like they needed to sort of give themselves that, I call it like Tuesday treat yourself, right? And we were trying to make sure that we capitalized on that, because I think the more people also wanted to sell the items to make money, the more there were people actually looking for those items. And I think that's the beautiful thing about all of our different platforms, is that we're connecting people to sources of supply, and we're creating that demand as well at the same time.
Right. And Sarah, yeah, that's what do you see future-wise then? I mean, all these platforms, Bill was talking about how doing the digital aisle is somewhere you might be able to take shopping to. It's an online experience. Do you see any platforms that you're experimenting with that are just maybe next generation kind of things? Are brands talking about augmented reality and lens technology and things like that?
Absolutely. Both retailers trying to use more augmented technology to help people first and foremost figure out how to navigate the store. Oftentimes right now, people don't want to spend a long time actually walking through a store. So they want to know when they get there exactly what's going to be there. So you're seeing it used that way. You're seeing a lot of brands, particularly in the home space, that are using augmented reality, as well as in the beauty space. Earlier today, you had Ulta on one of your panels and was talking about that. I mean, the behaviors are still there. So this idea about innovating around how do you try on, or how do you test and look at new things and envision what it looks like either in your home or on your face, is something that hasn't changed. It's just a matter of having the innovation and the technology to be there. What I thought's been really interesting that we're seeing a lot is, particularly because we work with a lot of CPG brands too, is this notion around sampling and how people have approached sampling, both being able to provide opportunities to be able to get those types of experiences, and looking at being able to provide almost like these virtual sampling experiences online to be able to try different things. And people have lessened some of the constraints around returns, so that people can try either a different brand or something in their home that normally they might have been hesitant to purchase, removing those types of barriers.
All right, and we're gonna probably wrap up pretty quickly. We went right through our allotted time, but before we do, are there any other just final points you think are worth mentioning before I say farewell? Starting with Bill.
Sure. Just a plug for our Pinterest Insights, our Pinterest Trends tool. It's easily accessible for any partner, and with respect to some of the insights that I was sharing, that's a great place to go and see how you can apply our insights to your business and to your brands.
That's right. And Stephen with Poshmark, how about yourself?
I think it's just really continue to share with everyone that, in a time when financial constraints are the most important thing, that a lot on top of people's minds, that Poshmark is there as a source for people to be able to sell and monetize the goods that they have in their home in order to create some extra income. And it's how we can help everyone kind of get through these tough times.
tie-dye, right? That's the way to do it.
You either have it or you're going to make it and you're going to sell it.
Sarah's daughter will be buying that up.
That's right.
What else, Sarah? Anything before we can say goodbye to you as well?
I would say that it's never too late to address what is your digital commerce strategy. We've been getting a tremendous amount of outreach right now from people that are still trying to work out what back to school looks like in holidays. So if you think you're behind, you are not. So we're working with a lot of new clients, doing a lot of projects right now to help people figure out what those experiences are going to look like online right now and pull forward plans that they might have had for 24 months from now. We've got people activating direct to consumer, people that have never actually done anything on any social commerce platforms looking for new strategies. And it's never too late to start right now.
Well, thank you all. And it was great talking with you. And hopefully we'll get to do it again. We'll have you back for the next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. And I'm going to be bringing on my colleague, Adrian Pasquarelli, right now, who I get to talk with.
Thanks, Garrett. So many trends to unpack there. Ranch dressing, tie-dye.
Yeah, you're familiar with that, right?
But I noticed that you didn't ask Poshmark about that cardigan. I know you're always after the Mr. Rogers office cardigan. Is it because we're not in the office now? You don't wear those as much?
It didn't even register to me that cardigans were my thing. I didn't realize. I don't wear those a lot, do I?
The red one, the Mr. Santa Claus cardigan?
Yeah, it's too hot right now, so I don't have one. I do have I'm looking very 80s today, I was told.
Miami Vice.
Miami Vice. How's this going for you anyway? What's happening? Have you been having a good day?
Yeah, we're talking about a lot of trends, and next up we're going to talk about consumer behavior and what's ahead after we get through this pandemic. So I think we're ready to.
You're going to kick me off?
Well, you're welcome to stay and watch.
Oh, I'll watch. I'll watch from the green room. You have fun, but it was good talking with you.
Great. Thanks, Garrett. For our last session of the day, we'll be taking a forward look at how the changes in consumer shopping habits might affect retailers in the future and what marketers can be doing now to make sure they're prepared. Joining me today, we have Kian Bakhtiari, founder of The People.
Hello.
And Barbara Kahn, who is the Patty and J. H. Baker Professor of Marketing at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania.
Hi,
Barbara. Hi. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Before we get started, I want to remind everyone watching in our social channels to please leave questions, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the session.
Okay.
So a lot of the consumer behavior that we saw during the pandemic, the panic buying, the move to digital shopping, the bread baking, we're all aware of those things. But what we don't know is what's here to stay. I can't see that a lot of people are going to be baking sourdough this summer, for example, or at least not me. It's too hot. Let's start with shopping. There was all the stocking up in March. Naturally, some stock of key items ran out. Do you think as fears of the virus continue, that consumers will forever shop differently and keep somewhat stockpiling things, bigger supplies of toilet paper? Kian, what do you think here?
Yeah, I think to the point you made, Adrian, there's the short term and then there's the longer term. And I think when the pandemic first started and everyone was aware of COVID-19, it was a new phenomena and no one knew what it was and no one knew the answer. So there was this kind of, that encourages panic buying. And when at its core, human beings are social creatures. So when we see other people behave and react in a certain way, such as buying toilet paper, we do, we react in the exact same manner. I think what's different this time is if we do experience a second wave, this is no longer a new experience. It's no longer an unknown. And therefore, I think there's a familiarity when it comes to planning. And actually, people will have learned from the first wave if that is the case.
Barbara, how can retailers be addressing this? I mean, we've seen so many innovations with pickup and delivery, buy online, pickup in store, drive up at Walgreens. What should retailers be keeping in mind as they start to plan?
So I think there's two phenomena that would be of interest to a retailer and all managers or that might go direct. The first is what you're talking about, this acceleration that we saw in e-commerce behavior, or maybe in the BOPIS, buy online, pick up in the store. So I think the analysts are, this was a trend. Here's one of the things that I think can help us differentiate between what's short-term, what's long-term. The trend towards e-commerce and the convenience of buy online, pick up in the store was happening before COVID occurred. And what COVID did was accelerate that trend. And some of the analysts are telling me the acceleration was about 2 to 3 years, which means we would have predicted some of this behavior happening anyway, because it's just so convenient to buy online or to buy online and pick up in the store. But what we predicted would take 2 to 3 years for it to happen happened in a few months. So that's one thing that retailers better get up to speed on, that if it's a repeat purchase, a purchase where convenience is the most important parameter to consider, you're going to see more people being online or looking for the buy online, pick up in the store. So that's probably obvious, although quantifying the numbers is interesting. The second trend, I think, is more interesting. You know, you were talking about the notion of making bread, and we were talking about stockpiling, some of these other consumer behaviors that happened as a result of this shock to the system. And the question is going to be, how will that continue over time? So, for example, we know, looking at consumer behavior data, that many of the consumers who were stockpiling or buying because they were cooking at home or something were buying different brands than they bought before. And so what a marketer is going to have to consider is, if I got this customer interested in my brand, how can I build a relationship with that customer over time so that when we go back to the new normal, whatever that is, they'll stay loyal to my brand? And that's very interesting to see how that will be done.
Do you think we'll see some bigger marketers discontinue products and really narrow their focus into core categories?
We've already seen that. There's a famous story about the Costco sheet cake, which is a very popular product at Costco. Costco has a lot of very popular products, but this one is a big, delicious sheet cake, and they've decided not to continue it, partly because you shouldn't be congregating in big groups, so who needs this big sheet cake? Although many of their customers have told them they're happy to eat it all themselves. But the other thing is that you are seeing a possibility now, because of some of the stock out issues and supply chain issues and the complexity of this move over into these new channels, you have seen some retailers make their assortment smaller and more efficient. Now, that's more efficient for supply chain logistics. It also makes the tyranny of choice problem go away. And so consumers might actually like that when they go into the store, there's not 37 different flavors of ice cream or 200 different kinds of soft drink. They may like the smaller assortment. And if that is better for the consumers, we'll see that continue. If there's a drive after a while for some of those exotic flavors again, we may see the assortments grow again.
Right, the paralysis of choice. Nobody wants to spend that much time in the aisles right now looking at different flavors. Everyone's trying to get what they want and get out of there. Speaking of the in-store experience, Kian, do you think people will ever be comfortable being around each other again?
Yeah, I think to that point, and the point you both made about acceleration, I think that is very true. So what we've seen is an acceleration of existing trends. But at the same time, what's interesting is we've also seen the mass adoption of new behavior. So if you almost imagine the traditional diffusion of innovation, as Barbara was saying, traditionally it would take probably years, if not decades, for people to move from the innovators to the early adopters and then to the early majority. And I think what we've seen with the pandemic is it's forced everyone to become an innovator and an early adopter. And I think a prime example and a personal example is my grandparents are in their 80s and they're now using Zoom, FaceTime, and they're buying stuff on Amazon. And to the question you asked, Adrian, what makes that interesting is that traditional debate and discourse around online versus in-store. I think that is, in this new world, it's no longer as relevant. What we're now seeing is a mixed reality where, because of the pandemic and the lengthy shutdown of stores, those deep-seated and deep-rooted consumer behaviors have changed. People have had to question their existing habits because they were no longer able to buy in-store. And what we know from the data is people were already buying online. So buying online was common, it was prevalent. So if you take America, 69% of people were already buying online and 25% were buying regularly. I think the key difference now is consumers and people are going to move from buying some things online, so like books and clothes that they're already used to, towards actually buying most things online. But I think at the same time, the question I would ask is, do people actually want to buy everything online? And actually, if I was to answer that, I don't think they would. I think there's this kind of human urge to go to a physical store, to touch things and to explore things with your senses. And there's parts of the retail experience, the in-store experience, that the online world cannot, and e-commerce sites cannot replicate.
Well, I think that brings us to what we talked a little bit about in the last session, this idea of this online community, bringing some physical things into the digital realm. And it feels like that might be a big opportunity for brands too. Kian, do you think there's an area there?
I definitely think there's a huge move to community. And from a psychological and cultural perspective, we know from history that whenever there's a time of crisis, and even a close comparison is war, communities come together and society becomes more community-minded. So traditionally, Western society has been built on the ideals of individualism. So personal freedom and personal gain and achievement. But I think what we're seeing now is the shift towards a more community-minded mindset. And actually, Adrian, we've recently done some really interesting study with our community of creators alongside Professor Ben Boyer, who is a behavioral scientist at London School of Economics. And what we saw is as people's attitudes become more community-minded, so does their buying motivation. So rather than buying for personal gain, they buy things to share with others and to enjoy products and services and experience with others.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Pasquarelli with Ad Age. I'm joined by Kian Bakhtiari of The People and Barbara Khan of the Wharton School. I'd like to quickly give a shout out to people who are watching on our social channels, Christina Maza, Barbara Marin, and Rose Benchoshan. Hi, guys. So Barbara, let's talk a little bit about what marketers need to be considering moving forward. We've heard a lot about back to school and holiday a bit in some of the prior conversations today. Both seem like a huge headache. What should brands be doing as they start to map out their advertising for the remainder of the year?
I mean, that is such a difficult decision because they have to figure out, the leftover inventory they have, whether or not people can be in and out of the stores, how to forecast and plan for the future. It's the typical problem. If you don't have what people are looking for in the store, they'll buy something else. So you want to make sure it's there. But if you misforecast demand, then you have leftover inventory. So really trying to second guess what's going to happen in what people are going to need in the future is a pretty difficult thing. In the United States, which it might be different than in UK, there's incredible uncertainty, partly because there's so much politics involved. And every day you hear, different regulations come in and out that that suggests one type of behavior, and then we see spikes come up, and then there has to be another type of behavior. So it's really, really difficult to plan, but it's obviously critical. Quarter four for retailers has always been the most important quarter. So, and it couldn't be more true now when a whole quarter was shut down. So yeah, it's very important to figure out what's going to happen. I mean, you say back to school. I didn't hear the earlier panel, so I don't know what they were saying then, but we don't know what back to school is going to look like. And we certainly know that if you're sitting at home in front of your computer, you don't need the same kind of clothes that you did before. Although children, the one good thing about children is they grow, and so they won't fit into some of their old stuff. But it is a really big issue whether or not people are going to be in the classroom, or they're not going to be in the classroom, whether they're going to be allowed to go to stores, or they're not going to be allowed to go to stores. And this is a time of incredible uncertainty.
I think it's this idea of creating multiple pieces of content just to every possible scenario be ready for, which really can be taxing, put a lot of pressure on the brands. What about the channel mix? We saw some pullback earlier this spring from broadcast TV during the pandemic, and a lot of brands focused more on digital marketing. Now there's this growing boycott of Facebook. What channels are safe, and how should brands be diversifying? Barbara, do you want to take this one?
Well, I mean, safe. I'm not sure what you mean by safe. Some of the traditional advertising isn't possible because they're not creating the new programs and things like that. So if that's what you mean, there's a lot of this. The Facebook boycott has to do with taking a stand on certain issues, so that I'm not sure what you mean by safe. But
just to align your brand with, and also in terms of getting the most dollars back for your investment, your marketing dollars.
I don't know exactly. Yeah, it's not my expertise. I talk more about retail than advertising channels, so I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be, and certainly not here. So I should probably not answer that question.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about some of the retail trends that we've been seeing? Of course, there's been a huge rise in sustainability. It's less of a trend, more of a phenomenon, it feels like, in the last few years. But as the economy falters now and consumers start to tighten their wallets, will they still be willing to pay more for some of these goods? Eco-friendly products aren't really known for being inexpensive, obviously the opposite of fast fashion. Kian, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question when you think of the context of the current health crisis. The question arises, how important is sustainability and the environment in people's lives? And I think the point we made before around the importance of communities really key when it comes to the future of retail, because what we're seeing now is the convergence of social media and e-commerce, and what we're going to see moving forward is the rise of social commerce, where people are buying stuff on the same channels that they are communicating with their friends and their peers. And actually, one of the more interesting behaviors and trends we've seen more recently with the younger generation, and especially millennials, but definitely Gen Z, is the rise of re-commerce. So rather than buying products and clothes new, which is more expensive, they are preferring to buy second-hand clothes through social media and social commerce platforms. Firstly, because they have less disposable income, but secondly, they get to customize and buy new clothes more regularly. And I think thirdly, it's also a sign where in the past, second-hand clothes and buying clothes from others was seen as not cool. Today, it's seen as cooler than buying things once and only wearing it once.
Right, there are these whole groups of on social channels of people who just trade only, no selling or buying. It's really just about trading with others and kind of maximizing your closet. Barbara, do you have any thoughts on sustainability and as a factor?
I mean, the sustainability issue is an interesting one. I think it's a genuine one, and I think people really do want to buy towards it. But of course, when you have health concerns, a lot of the things that were sustainable decisions are not as healthy. So there's this trade-off between, reusing things. Maybe there's more germs on it, maybe not, and doing what's right. But I think that people will take the health constraints into account. And the move towards sustainability is a very strong one. There are a lot of brands that are seriously and authentically dedicated to doing the right thing, and they are continuing marching forward and advertising about that. There are others that maybe are a little less authentic and will pay more attention to what the trends are and what their market research is indicating. And so you'll see some different responses to that. But I personally believe the move towards sustainability is a really good one, and that people are sincere about it and they're willing to pay for it.
Now, in addition to all of the concerns around the coronavirus, there's also a big concern of how brands are reacting on the issue of social justice and making sure that they're supporting their customers, particularly customers of color. Kian, how do you think brands should be acting, and what should they be doing right now on these issues?
Yeah, Adrian, I think before anything is done, the first step is acknowledging the movement and acknowledging the Black Lives Matter movement and actually listening to people's lived experiences and historic and structural injustices. Until we can have that first phase of acknowledgement and listening, I think it's really hard to take action. And once you've had that phase of listening, I think the second step is looking internally. So before deciding to make external communications or a decision to change society, I think the first thing brands and agencies should do is look internally and ask the question, is my company reflective and representative of society at large and my consumer? And if it's not, I think first, it's a shame. And second, I don't think it's also a bad business decision, because if you're not a mirror to your customer and consumer base, it's hard to be as creative as possible. It's hard to be as effective as possible. And I think here is an opportunity to take collective action. So if you're a brand, making sure the agency partner you work with is representative and inclusive. And similarly, if you are an agency, making sure your brand the brand you're working with has the best intentions for society at large. And I think if this time has taught us anything, whether it's COVID-19 or the Black Lives Matter movement, is a lot can be done through the power of collective action, as seen with the Facebook boycott.
Right. Barbara, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I agree. He said a lot, so there was a lot to unpack. But I think the most important thing is to listen. I agree with that opening statement. And I also agree that looking inward is very important too. Because if your behavior is not authentic, if you're saying one thing and doing another thing, that definitely won't work. Whenever you make any kind of political statement, you're weighing the possibility of antagonizing some customers and bringing along other customers. So it really should be true to your own values. And some of this stuff is done not knowingly. Some of it is done that, this implicit bias, this unconscious bias. So I completely agree that there's a very strong, it's very important for brands to look internally and make sure they're expressing the values that they're now saying publicly. A trite statement, just a statement with nothing to back it up, it won't work to help build brand or won't work to satisfy the customers. And in the end, what brands should be doing is delivering value to their customer segments. So they should understand what matters to their customers and make sure they're living by those customer values also.
Yeah, it feels like consumers are really paying a lot more attention, and they're going to be watching to see what brands say and how they execute those plans in the future. We're almost out of time, but I did want to kind of touch on this trend of working from home. Obviously, if this becomes more of a permanent change in some companies, marketers may have to rethink how they're reaching their customers. I was wondering what brands should be thinking about in this area. If you guys have any thoughts on that. Barbara?
Okay. I mean, it's a couple interesting things. Well, obviously, if you work at home, your behavior is different. And we have already seen big changes in apparel purchases, for example. Lululemon has been less hurt from other apparels because they produce the clothing that people want to wear at home. But we don't know in the future how long some of these trends will last. We won't know once you finally get out from behind your computer how much you're going to want to buy different kinds of clothes. We are seeing prediction that there will be more work from home. But the truth of the matter is that prediction's been around for a while, and we haven't really seen long-term trends towards that. So while I do believe there'll be some move in that direction, I don't think it'll be as strong as some analysts are predicting. So that's one trend. But we also don't know how long this COVID behavior and this stay-at-home kind of behavior will last. So if it's going to last for a couple of years, it might not matter what happens 2 more years after now. So maybe it is kind of just what you're going to wear while you're staying at home.
Kian, any thoughts on working from home?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this session is aptly called the playbook for marketers post-pandemic, because I think the most important point on that is marketers as a whole need to relook and reassess their customer segmentation strategy. As Barbara pointed out, not everyone has been affected in the same way. And what we're going to see moving forward is difference in behavior. So there's going to be people who have adopted new behaviors. And there's also going to be a large group of people who go back to the old normal. And in order to make the correct decision and communicate correctly and effectively with consumers, marketers need to reassess and recreate their understanding of the consumer.
And I guess we'll find out how they do that. That's all the time that we have today. Barbara and Kian, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, and I hope everyone tuning in feels better prepared to handle the future. Please keep checking adage.com for all of our continuing retail coverage. Thank you again to our sponsors, Micmac, PayPal Credit, Roku, and Walmart Media Group. And a special thanks to Loop and Tie. As always, thank you to our Ad Age live stream dream team, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, Max Sternlick, and Elise Lefring for all their work on this digital event. I want to remind everyone to check back with us in a few weeks when we host an event around America's hottest brands on July 28th. Until then, stay cool, and thanks for tuning in.